Welcome to another episode of Meet the Author Live from book publisher New Degree Press, or NDP. I'm your host, John Saunders. NDP is part of Manuscripts Inc. This enterprise has now published over 1,700 authors from 6 continents and earned a spot on the Inc. 5000 list for the second year in a row. This is the fastest growing privately held companies in America. Think you have a book in you or want to start or accelerate your movement in the next 12 to 15 months? Visit manuscripts.com to learn more. This program this is a comprehensive coaching program that will take you from idea to published book, not just published, but published like a second-time author, which includes audience activation and creation, which we'll learn a little bit more about today. We're doing a new segment of Meet the Author Live. This is an opportunity to learn everything valuable there is to know about the author, and we can answer your questions in the chat. So to start, please drop a comment in the chat on where you're joining us from. Always great to see where our fans are joining us from, and let us know where you are, and certainly drop a note in for Dr. Jennie if you would. So our guest today is brand new author, Dr. Jennie Byrne, who published her book, Work Smart, Use Your Brain and Behavior to Master the Future of Work, just a few weeks ago in January. She also has a new podcast episode out on the New Degree Press Creator Community Show, which premiered just a couple of weeks ago. It's available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. A little bit about Dr. Jennie. She's the founder and CEO of Constellation PLLC and the Chief Patient Officer at Belong Health. She has been called a triple threat because of her work as a physician leader, a healthcare executive, and as an entrepreneur. She is a brain and behavior specialist with extensive training and experience in psychiatry, psychotherapy, and neuroscience. Dr. Jennie is a relentless optimist and believes we can all work smarter. And I love this quote from your book. Everyone thinks, or from your work, everyone thinks that the future of work is about technology, but I will convince you it's about being a better human. Love that quote, Dr. Jennie. Great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Nice to see you again, John. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. Well, so exciting. How does it feel to have a book out there with your name on it, available wherever you buy books online, and already, I think, 35-star reviews, give or take?
Yeah, it's been a little overwhelming, to be honest. I think it got real for me when I sent out a giant shipment of about 250 books to my VIP early supporters, and they've been sending me selfies. My book has been traveling around the country, and I think that's when it got real.
And you signed them all?
I signed them all, put notes in for everybody, shipped them all off, and now they've been sending me pictures, and that part's been really, really wonderful.
I've seen a bunch of them on LinkedIn where people are holding up your book and celebrating it. Super, super fun. And just a little context for our listeners out there. Most authors on average sell 200 books lifetime. So what Dr. Jennie is saying is she sold 250 before the book was even available on Amazon or wherever. Right. So that was just in the pre-sale. What was that pre-sale experience like for you?
Oh gosh, I have to be really honest. I thought that the writing the book part would be the hardest for me. And I think the pre-sale was one of the hardest. I'm not used to being honestly on social media that much. I like to connect with people, but the experience of really talking about a book which didn't exist in a concrete way yet was really challenging, and putting myself out there, I felt like it was kind of a vulnerable experience. But as I started to talk to more people and I really got early supporters, that really was like rocket fuel to keep me going and get through the rest of it. And there were some bumpy parts, so it really helped.
It's amazing how much just getting those bits of feedback, seeing how your work is impacting people out there, and really how much that can push you along. And certainly, I think the community here, I know, right? You've been a part of this community, very active member of this community. And what's that experience been like for you?
I'll admit I was a little bit of a skeptic. I always thought that you wrote a book in a dark room by or a cabin in the woods. I always thought that's kind of how you did it. And when this opportunity came along to write with a community, at first I was like, how is that? How would you write with a community? I didn't get it. But as time went on, it became really obvious why that was so important, not just the editorial support or the teaching support, but having friends. And I've made a couple women actually very good friends, and we've never even met in person, but just taking the journey together through all the ups and downs really bonded us together. And again, I said there were some hard parts along the way. So having them in particular, but the community as well, really helped when things were a little tough.
That's amazing. And could you take us to one of those moments? Where did you see a point where you're like, what the heck am I doing here? And you reach out to your friend. Can we narrow it down to one? Is that possible?
Yeah. Oh God. So, okay. So the worst detour, I'll call it a detour, an unfortunate detour through citations. So as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm a neuroscientist by training. So I did a PhD. So I'm very familiar with citations. I thought I was like a pro. I've written papers, academic, et cetera, et cetera. So when it came time to do the citations for the book, it was different. And the format that they needed and wanted was totally different. And I just went into this horrible spiral back and forth where I just couldn't seem to get it right. I was spending a lot of time. I was like pulling out my hair, and having the support of my friends and colleagues really got me through that one. That was like my worst moment, I would say, was like probably a 2-week detour through citations that was just miserable.
Sadly, I wish I could say my experience wasn't similar, but when I wrote my book, yes, I had like 300 citations in my book, and you have to get them all exactly right, and painful. Well, you still survived it. You have a lovely book. Love the cover. How did that cover design come together for you on WorkSmart?
I love the story of the cover design because I'm very visual, and it was really important to me to have something that resonated with me as an author, but others as well. And so where we started, there were a lot of pictures of like brains or, brainy looking things. And I was like, well, it is about brain. And then kind of I had this aha moment where I was like, my brand for my consulting business, my coaching business is Constellation, right? And that's the idea of connecting the dots in new and unexpected ways, which is what I love to do. So I was like, let's pull that into the book. Is there a way that we can get that same feeling of connecting the dots and kind of future looking? And the team at New Degree came up with this one, and they came up with about 4 others. And I sent it out to my VIP community to vote. And it was interesting, people had really different opinions. It wasn't like there was a clear, everybody voted for the same thing, but this one was the winner, and it was also the one that I liked the best too. So it seemed like this was meant to be.
And it really, I love how it came together, pulled your work together, your business metaphor, it all came together, and connecting the dots. It really turned out beautifully.
Thank you.
I love it. What would you say you learned most from writing your book?
Ooh, I think we mentioned the first one, which is that it is a community activity, which was a big surprise. The second thing I learned was that I needed to practice what I preach a little bit. I talk about being a better human and showing up at work as a whole person. And I realized as I went along writing is that there are many parts of me as a human that I don't bring to work and I haven't shared. And so the book, I wrote personal stories where I shared things that like a lot of people didn't know about me. And so I don't know when they read it if they're going to be surprised or not. But I think it was the getting vulnerable and making it a little more personal, like less academic and more personal, surprised me both how challenging that was and how rewarding it was. So I'm still a little nervous. I don't know. When people read these stories, they might be like, oh, Dr. Jennie, I had no idea. That's really weird that you like to do this thing,
What can you take us into one of those stories? What do you think is going to surprise people out there?
Well, there's one story which I hadn't told anybody before I wrote this book.
Oh, wow.
And it tied into the idea of the traditional office where, you had to show up looking a certain way. And for women, and for me, especially about 10 years ago, I felt I had to look a certain way, very polished, professional, and so I would wear heels to work. And I don't wear heels now, by the way, but I would wear heels to work. And we had a fire drill. I was in this beautiful office building where I saw patients. I had my own business as an entrepreneur. It was beautiful. I dressed in heel. I had this whole thing, and we had a fire drill, and I had a patient in the room, and we tried to get out of the building quickly. And I fell down a flight of stairs in my heels beside my patient.
Oh my God.
And this is a patient who I've been doing psychotherapy with. It was a very intense psychotherapeutic relationship. And I'm like flat on my face at the bottom of the stairwell with my patient. So It's just a funny moment that I hadn't shared because it was kind of embarrassing. And then I was like, sure, I'll put it in the book because it really highlights in a funny way some of the price that I or other women pay to get dressed every day, to go into a traditional office.
Wow. Oh, please tell me the patient didn't go down that fault with you. Is that?
No, she was so kind and lovely. And I wonder sometimes if that, solidified our relationship because I was very human in that moment, right? Like I wasn't the doctor. I was like a very human person that did something dumb.
Right. Isn't it amazing how the power of creation, it just opens so many doors for us. It gives us, vulnerable. It makes us, force us to be more vulnerable, which can be a painful experience at times, but the community really helps make it happen.
Yes.
And Jennie's book is available today. You can go visit her website, work-smart-book.com, or go get it anywhere you buy books online. So awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your goals for this year, Dr. Jennie. What are you thinking about for 2023 now that the book is out?
2023, I said I'm an optimist and I'm a futurist. So of course I'm excited about 2023. Some of the things I'm really looking forward to the most are, first of all, seeing where the book takes me. I really don't have preconceived notions necessarily about where this will go. So I'm very kind of curious to see who I connect with, who the message resonates with, really what happens there. I'm also really excited about just being more creative in general. One of the things about writing I learned, or maybe amplified, was the fact that creativity is an important force for me in my personal life, but actually makes me work better. And so I have a lot of creative stuff going on right now that I'm excited about kind of letting that come out even more. And then I'm working, you mentioned at the beginning, with a company called Belong Health. And it's a startup. It's about 2 years old. It's a healthcare company. We focus on taking care of traditionally very vulnerable and underserved patients. And the company is growing. I got to help build the culture from day one, including a lot of the stuff I researched for the book, I was researching for the company. And so I'm really excited to see that growth and where that culture goes. We're now up to about 50 people. And to really see an organization that you help build is also really exciting.
So you kind of got to use the organization as, dare I say, a bit of a testing ground for the content and the work you're doing.
I don't want to say it's experiment because it wasn't exactly that. But yes, I mean, it was the same time. I was researching the book while implementing and trying things that I had been researching in real life. So they kind of fed one another, and I got to see kind of what was working and what wasn't working.
That is so cool. I love that story. And you also mentioned in your earlier comment that going through this creative journey made you better in your work. How did that play out?
Yeah, so I write about this pretty early on in the book. I learned that, in the pandemic, many people, including myself and my family, were languishing. So languishing being this kind of unpleasant state where time is moving in weird directions. You don't feel like you have momentum. You're just kind of listless. It's not necessarily depression, although a lot of people had depression. So the opposite of languishing is kind of flow. And flow states can be brought about through creativity. And so I started experimenting during the pandemic, like I think some other people did, with ways to get creative. And what I found was the more I stepped away from my little box, right, and did something creative, I would come back thinking in all new ways. I would have new ideas, new ways of connecting the dots. And so it was this kind of counterintuitive thing where the less I quote unquote worked, the better the work was. And I think that's very counterintuitive for people, that the less time you sit there and spend with your little box doing your little emails and things, like you come back and you're actually better.
I feel like every major inflection point in my career is almost exactly that story, where I sort of
Really?
stepped away from what I was doing,
Yeah.
did some work outside the organization, volunteering or otherwise, or did something creative and came back with just a completely fresh set of eyes. It helped rejuvenate, re-energize, and really build better. Sounds like a parallel story there. I love that. How are you helping patients and providers today, Dr. Jennie? What does that look like?
So I work, my title at Belong Health is Chief Patient Officer, which is a really interesting title. And it basically, again, gets back to what makes us human, because I think healthcare, many industries as well, we've gotten into this trap of thinking about ourselves as robots on an assembly line, as opposed to being human beings. And when you're a patient and you're sick, there's nothing worse than feeling like you're on an assembly line. So, when I had my practice, this was one of the things I focused on for day one. How do I want somebody coming to see me to feel? How do I want them from the moment they see my name or search online or whatever? How do I want them to feel? What's the experience like? And it's not being a robot. So I believe that in healthcare and what we do at Belong, thinking about the experience of the patient, not just like, how do I get them from point A to B in the quickest amount of, or the cheapest way possible? That's the part that everybody's craving, is the human connectedness and the empathy. And it's the same with the people who provide healthcare. So I'm a physician, and part of my work is helping other physicians, nurses, physician assistants, the whole group of people who provide healthcare. They feel like robots. They feel like that too, because healthcare became this very assembly line kind of experience. So my job now is to try to infuse that humanism back into healthcare at a systems level. And that ties into the book, because that's really one of the premises of my book, is that we all are craving human connection and empathy. And nobody really wants to feel like a robot.
So many interesting things to dig into there, but I love this idea of sort of systematizing being more human. What does that look like, Dr.
Yeah.
Byrne?
So I think, if you think about human, like what makes us human, right? First of all, we have to understand all the silly human things that we do. And we have to admit that we're all human. So I'm human, you're human, everybody listening or watching is human. We all do the same dumb stuff. And there's a reason, it's because our brain is wired a certain way. And that way was very adaptive in many situations for millennia. And that's why it's that way. But in today's world, we do dumb stuff. So for example, an example from 401ks, everybody might say, well, I sign up for a job, I want to save money, I should do a 401k. But do they do that? Well, it turns out if you make the default option, maybe you've had this at a job, John, where like it's default, you're getting a 401k. Well, guess what? 80+% of people do it. If it's not the default, the number drops dramatically. So things like that, where you can make defaults, is an example of behavioral science, which is a whole method of infusing more human thinking into work. And then I would offer other simple examples, like, for example, when we were in traditional offices together, you might show empathy by good manners. Opening the door for somebody is a form of empathy, right? It's nonverbal empathy. It's like, I see that you're coming to the door, I'm going to open it so that you can go through more easily. But in the virtual world or the hybrid world, we struggle to figure out how to be empathetic with one another. And I think some of the ways that we hold meetings, for example, are very non-human. And so learning how to do meetings well, I talk a lot about in the book, is a way to be empathetic, to think about the user, the human being sitting in the meeting, and what is going to be working for them, as opposed to like, well, this is how we do meetings. We all get together, we do this slide, we do this, like, that's just the assumption, but that's not really the way it has to be.
And probably not the way people want to consume that information, right? Or be engaged with it. I love that you're just rethinking so many things. And one of my stories that really blew my mind from your podcast interview from a couple of weeks ago was the one about sort of the origin of cubicles. You want to share a bit of a teaser to that story, if you would?
Sure. This was one of the most interesting things I learned doing the research, was that I was trying to figure out, like, well, where did the office, the traditional office come from? Like, I don't know, where did it come from? And I went back and researched, and it was about 100 years ago. So our traditional office came from the Ford factory floor. And the idea that all the humans would be lined up on this assembly line with repetitive movements being monitored by managers who ringed the floor. So you can imagine, fast forward, the factory model is very successful, it grows, et cetera. Now, all of a sudden, instead of the assembly line, we have cubes in the middle of a big floor with managers and offices ringing the cube. So the cube farm is basically an extension of the Ford factory. And we all knew cube farms were silly, right? Like, we had the TV show The Office and the movie Office Space. And so we were already parodying this like 10 years ago because we knew it was so silly. But again, is it any reason that we feel like robots when our entire environment at the traditional office was from a factory?
It is just mind-blowing to think that concept has been around for 100+ years, and here we are still using it all over the place, maybe giving up on it a little bit. I love that story, and we go into it in much greater detail in the podcast you were on just a couple of weeks ago on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts out there. If you would like to drop a question or comment in the chat, please do. We're going to move to the rapid fire questions here in just a minute, but if you've got something you'd like to ask Dr. Jennie about specifically, please do. Dr. Jennie, you're doing a promotion around a free ebook. How's that working? How's that going to work?
So I had a promotion on the ebook for about a month. So that's actually already passed. But what I think I'm getting ready to launch is going to be book clubs. So if you purchase like 5 to 10 books, and you can, send me a screenshot of your receipt or something like that. The first, I think it's gonna be 10 people, I'll do an author chat book club. So I'm hoping that, with coworkers or maybe friends, or maybe you do a book club, that if you want me to come and chat to your book club, I'd love to do that. So that's actually the promotion I'm probably going to run in a little bit. I don't think it's up yet, but it'll be later this month.
That sounds fantastic. And what a great concept to dig into, being more human at work. I love that. Would you write another book? What do you think?
Well, it's funny you asked that, John. I think I got the bug to write. I don't know if I mentioned to you on my podcast, but my husband is an attorney by training, and he recently left about a year ago, and he's writing too. So he is writing a fiction book. So we really had fun writing together at the same time, but totally different ways. So I'm already working a little bit. I have an idea for book number 2. And I kind of have a number 3, and they're kind of related. So we'll see where they go. But I think I did get the itch to keep writing. And
you inspired your husband to do it. I love it.
Well, he inspired me. I have to say, he had the idea before me.
Interesting.
Yep. But he's doing it in a very different way than I am. So we'll see.
I might recommend Alexandra Shapiro's book to him. She is an attorney in New York City who wrote a fiction book cool. 2 or 3 cycles ago in the program. That's awesome. Well, good luck to you on numbers 2 and 3, and to your husband. Well, let's dive into the rapid fire questions. These are always really fun. This is where we get to know everything really valuable to us, about the authors. And so let's jump in there and we'll get this thing rolling. You ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready. I like rapid fire.
They're so fun. I think probably the most important one, favorite sandwich or lunch meal?
Oh gosh, peanut butter. I just had it today for lunch.
I eat sun butter actually all the time.
It's weird.
Allergies in the house, but yeah, big fan. Same idea. Favorite color?
Blue. You can tell by the book.
The cover. Favorite or most memorable vacation spot?
Ooh, Peru. I went to Machu Picchu when I was in my 20s, and that left a really deep impression on me. It was a beautiful place.
Definitely on my list of places to go check out. Scariest animal?
Snakes.
They get such a bad rap.
And jellyfish. I have a weird phobia around jellyfish.
Well, they pop up in the Carolinas a lot, right?
I got stung pretty badly when I was a teenager by a big jellyfish, and I've been a little bit traumatized ever since then.
Sorry to hear that. First time we've heard jellyfish on the show. Thank you for that one.
Yes.
Better fruit, Dr. Jennie, apples or bananas?
Bananas.
We're going to have to agree to disagree on that one. Favorite movie?
Ooh, Amadeus. Simple story, well told. I'm a musician. I love the music. It's an odd choice, but that was one of my favorites.
I don't know if I've ever seen that movie.
You got to see that one.
Speaking of music, first concert you ever went to?
Gosh, I feel like I went to one when I was a teenager, but now I don't remember. I did get to see No Doubt here in North Carolina like 10 years ago. That was pretty exciting.
Oh, nice. Looks like we have somebody excited about book number 2 here, Randy Roy.
Oh, Randy's a great supporter from Chief. Hey, Randy. Thank you.
It's amazing how many Chief members have come to this program now. It's pretty extraordinary. Thanks for that, Randy. Favorite smell, Dr. Jennie?
I have a terrible sense of smell. I think it's a blessing, though, because I think there's more things that smell bad than smell good. So I think that's actually okay. But if I could smell something, I really love the smell of the ocean. actually.
The salt water. I love it. Last photo on your phone.
Oh gosh. Now I have to go see. I have a picture. We went to a butterfly garden
nice.
with my niece and nephew, and my brother-in-law took a beautiful picture of a butterfly on a flower. So that's actually right now on my phone.
Nice. Mine is of a neon wall outside a laser tag place I took my kids to yesterday.
Cool.
Favorite song to sing with or without an audience?
A Hot Take on Me.
A Hot Take on Me.
Yes, 80s favorite.
I'm gonna have to go look that one up. I don't recall that one. Who's the singer? I'm blanking right now.
Aha is the band. It was in 80s. It was like a one-hit wonder in the U.S.
Take on Me.
Yes.
Gotcha. Sorry.
Yes.
Now I know exactly what you're talking about. What is one thing you own that you should probably get rid of? Throw out.
I love to throw things away. I'm always throwing things away. I don't know if that's left over from when I used to live in New York. I think right now I have a lot of art supplies, which I should throw away, but I do pull them out every once in a while. So they're kind of accumulating, but they might be a fire hazard.
So did you live in New York City?
Yeah.
It's so funny, right? You get like a new shirt. You're like, I guess I have to get rid of one to fit
one
this
in,
my
one
closet,
out.
Right?
One in, one out is the rule in New York for sure.
You talked a little bit about 2023. What's your most audacious goal for this year? What's your moonshot?
Oh, my moonshot. Well, I'd like to get 10,000 copies of the book in people's hands, one way or the other. And I'd like to probably write book number 2. That's my big one.
I love it. You have a bunch of great praise quotes on your book. You want to share one of yours that you'd like our listeners to hear?
Oh gosh, I had so many people. It's interesting. There's some people I don't even know who they are. Have written quotes. That's always like a big moment when you get a quote from somebody and you're like, I don't even know who this person is. Someone wrote me a quote that said it was the 21st century guide you didn't know that you needed.
Ooh, I like that.
And I thought that was really interesting. And they were talking about how it made them think in a way that was so obvious, yet totally not obvious. And it really was outside of work. It was kind of holistic. So I love that one.
And knowing the little bit I know about your book, I could not agree with him more. What a great way to capture it. Most memorable moment in your writing journey, would you say? Besides citations.
Actually, it was recently. The most memorable was when I had that big giant box of books to get shipped out and I had to go to the post office. It was like a whole thing. And when they were finally out of my office, I was like, oh, my office is like so big. So I had a moment and it was a little emotional. I have to say, I wrote about it. Like I had a moment like reminded me of Charlotte's Web. Do you remember that book, John, from your childhood?
Way back.
Do you remember when Charlotte's babies all like came out of they all hatched and they flew away onto the wind? I always thought that was like a very sad moment, bittersweet moment. And when my books all went out into the world, I had this moment like, oh, all the babies went on the wind, and it was a little emotional. I got a little teary, and it was a little emotional.
I love that analogy. I could just sort of see your books flying out the door, right? Getting off to everyone. That is lovely. Dr. Jennie, what would you say to someone who's thinking about writing a book?
Oh gosh, I think if you're thinking about it, that means you should do it. But don't go it alone, unless you really are stoic, I suppose. But like, I think doing it with a community made a difference. And don't be afraid to like tinker. You know, a lot of the stuff from my book started as blogs or ideas or little, what did you guys call it? Snippets, I think, snippets and little paragraphs or thoughts. And don't be afraid. I mean, you can be a writer without sitting down and writing chapters, just grab little pieces. And I think that's part of the creative process. So don't be afraid to just do, a sentence, a phrase, anything, just to kind of get your thoughts down.
And it's just amazing how 100 little word snippets can turn into 300 to 700.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got 3,000 words on the page and you're like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I love the way you think about it there. How would you describe your writing word in five words? Your writing journey in 5 words, not necessarily a sentence.
Big, scary, creative, exciting, and vulnerable.
Wow. I think you caught them all. It is such a big part of the journey to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there. I really gained a whole new appreciation for anyone who creates anything going through the journey myself, because wow, you are putting yourself out there. And you put those words on the paper, and at some point they are permanent, and you have to say, this is my final book, send, right?
Yes.
Someone asked me recently, what was the hardest part about writing your book? And I said, hitting that send button.
Really?
On the final edition. I was like, I can change this. There's always something you can change. And I didn't do it, but that was a hard moment for me. Dr. Jennie, such an amazing story. Her book's available now on Amazon, wherever you buy books online. Definitely go out and check out her podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And I'd love to hear your closing thoughts, Dr. Jennie. What would you like to share with our listeners to close with?
Honestly, I just want to thank you, John. You've been really supportive personally through this journey, New Degree Press, and it's definitely had ups and downs, but I feel very thankful that I've been able to do this. And I had a book. I mean, there's like a book sitting on my shelf. I mean, it wasn't even a year ago hardly that I sat down and said, yes, I'll do this. So, that's a lot. That's you all really helped me make something real. So really just want to say thank you. And to all the VIP supporters, I don't know how many times I can say thank you, but it won't be enough. It has been such a pleasure to get to work with you and go through this journey and see all the iterations of it along the way, and your thoughtful approach to everything. So thank you for that. Thank you. Such a joy. Great to see you. Thank you for sharing your story with the creator community, Dr. Jennie. Really. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
I would like to say thanks to our listeners for joining this episode of Meet the Author Live. Definitely go check out Dr. Jennie's book, Work Smart, Use Your Brain and Behavior to Master the Future of Work, wherever you buy books online, and see the full episode of her Creator Community Channel episode on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. And be sure to follow New Degree Press on LinkedIn and the Creator Community on YouTube to stay up to date on what we're up to. I'm your host of the Creator Community, John Saunders. Keep creating.
Bye.
Bye-bye.